You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive.
That pro-Gaza independent MP there says that he doesn't want incestuous relationships to be illegal in Britain. Also, for a foreign national, an illegal immigrant, an ISIS bride or a member of the British Muslim community, it seems like you will get what you need. The Muslim Council of Britain have come for me and GB News, saying that we're Islamophobic and a danger to society. Unfortunately for them, they have misquoted me. They have made serious errors. The Trojan Horse is real. It is here. We let it in. It is time to deport that Trojan Horse right now. I take this stuff incredibly seriously, and I'll be hitting back at that at 10 p.m. Also tonight.
He promised that he would stop the boats this year.
I think the way to stop the boats is to smash the criminal gangs, people crossing in small boats across the channel. We have to stop that.
I've got a GB News exclusive for you, appearing to show that Labour is planning on sending taxpayers' money to the French for 6 more years. Do they actually want to stop those boats? Plus,
I genuinely believe it's time for a change in direction, and that change in direction is reform. And Nigel Farage.
It's a huge moment in British politics as Reform get a billionaire treasurer and the donations are rolling in. Are they on course to win the next election? And
a chap got shot, and all of a sudden it brought home to me, and I was standing next to him. It could have been me, and I was a bit. It shook me up a bit.
And I've got another exclusive for you, actually. I speak to a 91-year-old war veteran about how you can show support for brave veterans this Christmas. And
every city has a heart.
And every heart has a beat.
And with a beat this bold,
the whole city moves. Welcome to my city.
Welcome to Birmingham.
Well, Birmingham Council is bankrupt. Why? Because of a weird equality law that's forced our second city to go bust. On my panel tonight, it's the Tory MP Esther McVey, political commentator Alex Armstrong and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. And, well, this is a bit odd.
I want to be the first person to be with 1,000 guys in one day.
A porn actress has caused serious concern over plans to sleep with 1,000 men in a single day. What does this say about modern society? Get ready, Britain, here we go. If you'll excuse the pun, the Labour government doesn't have a position on having sex with your first cousin. Well, that's sink in. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines just after 9 o'clock. The UK and Germany have reached a landmark deal to tackle migrant smuggling. Germany has agreed to tighten laws, making it easier to prosecute smugglers behind small boat crossings to the UK. The deal also focuses on intelligence sharing and removing smuggling content from social media to disrupt criminal networks. Independent MP Iqbal Mohammed has spoken out against a proposed ban on first cousin marriages in the UK, calling the move unnecessary and unenforceable. Speaking in the Commons, Mr Mohammed acknowledged the health risks, but stressed the need for a cultural shift, not legislation, to address the issue. He did condemn forced marriages and virginity testing, highlighting the need to protect women's rights. However, the MP for Dewsbury and Batley argued that banning first-cousin marriages would not solve the problem. Now, the alleged killer of a US health insurance boss has tussled with police officers outside the court as they escorted him in. Luigi Mangione, in handcuffs, shouted to reporters outside the Pennsylvania courthouse.
Completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and lived experience.
The 26-year-old has been charged with murder after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in a targeted attack in New York last week. Police arrested Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania after a customer recognised him from media reports. To London now, where 2 people have been taken to hospital after an explosion in a terraced house in Ilford. It's after a video emerged online showing the moment that the house seemed to explode before erupting into flames. Eight fire engines and around 60 firefighters were deployed to the scene as the roof and the first floor of the 2-storey property were alight. The London Fire Brigade says Leigh Street is closed between Eastern Avenue and Vicarage Road, and they're asking the public to avoid the area. And former England rugby player Tom Royce is believed to have died after going into a river in his car in Northumberland. Northumbria police said it received a report on Sunday the 43-year-old had not returned to his home following an evening with friends. It is believed he attempted to cross the Aberwick Ford in his car, which was then pulled along the current of the River Alne. Police have since recovered the car, but officers have not found Mr. Royce, and it is believed he was carried away while attempting to escape and has died. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. It should be illegal to marry and have children with your first cousin. I don't think that's particularly controversial, but today an independent MP, Iqbal Mohammed, appeared to go into bat for incestuous relationships.
We try to step into the shoes of those who perhaps are not from the same culture as ours, to better understand why the practice continues to be so widespread. The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive, something that helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold.
Well, instead of making it illegal, he appears to want the taxpayer to pay for genealogy tests on the NHS to make sure that there are less medical issues with inbreeding.
A much more positive approach would be to facilitate advanced genetic test screening for prospective married couples, as is the case in all Arab countries in the Persian Gulf, and more generally to run health education programs targeting those communities where the practice is most common.
Well, I don't think the taxpayer should be paying more money so people can have sex with their first cousins. But the fact is, we already are. The London Borough of Redbridge reportedly found that 1 in 5 child deaths were caused by parents being related. In Birmingham, a report found that baby deaths were nearly double the national average, with a significant number coming from, quote, cousin couples. And we have also seen reports like this from the BBC.
Mohsin has a rare genetic disease which is gradually destroying his body.
The taxpayer is paying for the consequences of cousin marriage, and we have to be honest about the communities where this is most common. Indeed, in a prevalence of cousin unions amongst British Pakistanis, it was a contributing factor in child mortality rates in Bradford due to an increased risk of genetic conditions. NHS studies between 2007 and 2011 found first or second cousin marriages accounted for 60% of marital unions in people of Pakistani heritage in Bradford. Now, this compared to just 1% among white British couples in the same area. Now, it's shocking, and it needs to stop. But the Labour Party is in a complete mess over this. Now, the Tories have called for them to have a vote on banning cousin marriage.
Cousin marriage has absolutely no place in Britain. The medical evidence is overwhelming. It significantly increases the risk of birth defects. And the moral case is clear. We see hundreds of exploitative marriages which ruin lives. Frankly, it should have been stamped out a long time ago.
Obviously, you can very well make the case that the Tories should have stamped it out a long time ago. But what was Labour's response?
I know that there has been a recent Law Commission report on marriage law more generally, and the government is going to consult on broader reform to marriage law, and we will certainly consider the issues that he's raised before setting out a public position.
So the Labour Party, the British government, does not currently have a public position on whether or not it's OK to have sex with your first cousin. And it will be interesting, this, to see how all of those people who voted for Labour feel about it. Well, apparently you voted to freeze pensioners, you voted to shaft the farmers, and they don't seem to have a position on sleeping with your first cousin. Let's get our thoughts from my panel this evening. We are joined by the Conservative MP for Tatton, Esther McVey, the political commentator Alex Armstrong, and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Esther, should it be illegal to enter into a marriage with your first cousin? And what do you make of that independent MP, Iqbal Mohammed, in his comments in Parliament today?
Well, this has been bubbling up for a while. You talked about some of those studies, and I remember the Born in Bradford in 2013, that the number of children in Bradford born with birth defects would double the national average, and this was mainly due to the first cousin marriages within the Pakistani community. And really what we should be looking at is those health implications for those children. So, yes, we should be banning first cousin marriages. It's, as I've been bubbling around for a while, but it's obviously of much more importance right now. But people shouldn't be tiptoeing around it and finding excuses for it. When you see those serious disabilities, the suffering those children, and it makes sense to me to ban it. And if you can't ban it, then you need serious education to explain why it is wrong.
Alex, did you ever see the day, or think you'd see the day, that a Member of Parliament would stand up and appear to go into bat for what many would regard as incestuous relationships?
I'm dumbfounded. I really am. When I saw this story break today, I couldn't believe it. Not only is this, quite a major problem that's costing the NHS and people their lives, you just saw that clip from the BBC, but to now have it crop up and someone defend it in the home of our democracy, I think shows where this country is going. And it's been going on this gradual decline. We're not seeing the sensibilities that we need in Parliament for people to say, look, this is wrong. And as it British and part of our culture is to reject this. This is not part of our society. Maybe this used to happen in aristocracy and, as part of this pure blood breeding back in the day.
Yeah, this is the argument that people make, isn't it? Of course. That, well, this happened in the royal family yonks ago.
It did, Patrick. It did happen.
Before you'd done the studies about the defects in birth.
Of course.
And that's why I think we need to move on, and you shouldn't be defending it, as you say.
No, but we haven't. We don't anymore as a society generally defend this. But we've got somebody now sitting in Parliament, I believe it's one of the pro-Gaza MPs,
it is, yeah,
who is defending it, and we know why. And if we're going to say honestly why it is, it's not because of his background, it's because of the culture probably around his area, and I bet you there's many people who live in his constituency that are married to their cousin, and he won't want to upset those people. But that's not saying, that shouldn't stop him from saying this is wrong, and we should change
I'll bring
it.
you in. And look, Iqbal Mohammed is not here to defend himself on it. We have played what he set out pretty much in full. There was a larger chunk of it, to be fair on him. I also did speak to a representative of that independent group of MPs, and he made it very, very clear to me that that is not the view of that collective. He was seen as somewhat of a lone voice in that regard, and actually they weren't necessarily...
And he should be...
They weren't necessarily too happy with him saying it. One thing I will say, though, is, Bill, let's have a look at the Labour response to this so far, which has been that they, for want of a better phrase, do not have a position when it comes to having sex with your first cousin.
I really don't think that's fair, Patrick. For 14 years, the Tories never tried to outlaw marriage between first cousins. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, said today the government would consider it as part of an overall review of marriage, and I think at the moment that's the right way forward. My personal view is marriage between first cousins is wrong, and I say that for two reasons. One, the health risks. There's twice the risk of a genetic disorder if children are born of a union between two first cousins. Secondly, there are other genetic abnormalities. Also, and I choose my words carefully, the two communities where there are instances, or a number of instances, of first cousin marriages, the Irish community and the Pakistani Muslim community. And I choose my words carefully, and it's by no means in any way, shape or form the norm, but there are too many instances of forced and coerced marriages which are wholly unacceptable, and I think the risk of that is greater within a family marrying than outside of it.
And I think just to touch on the two communities where perhaps this was most prevalent, I think in certainly one of those communities, the Irish community here in Britain, I don't think in any way, I think they've grown out of it, for want of a better phrase. I think the idea that this was at one point a cultural norm has now gone, OK? Whereas the same does not appear to be able to be said for elements of the British Pakistani community. Now, the argument that he was making there, which is that in maybe their traditional homeland, as it were, that there is a norm there. Now, I've got no desire to reach into Pakistani society in their own country and make them change it. Do whatever you want. It's none of my concern, none of our concern. But if that is something that maybe is the norm abroad, I don't think that should necessarily be the norm here, Esther.
No, it shouldn't. And this should be about then education. If people don't necessarily know what the impacts are, and nobody would want to have their child suffer because they'd married their first cousin. Therefore, I'd say do serious education to say why this isn't right. But I don't think it wasn't necessarily brought up in Parliament when you say the Conservatives didn't do it for 14 years. No, they didn't. But now that it's become the issue of the day, you do need to have an opinion on it. And I don't really think it's a difficult opinion to have. We're trying to stop birth defects in the next generation of people. I don't think that's... I actually think that's coming from a very sort of human, sensitive point of view.
Well, I think we also should look at the root cause problem here, because we can say, let's educate people now, but it's too late. This is a failure of assimilation into our country. This is a failure of cultural integration, and that is a result of the mass immigration policies, unfortunately, of the Conservative Party, and preceding that, the Labour Party. And so we've got to look at where the mess is lying here. It's between two parties that have allowed our doors to be open and allowed whole communities of people to flood into the same area where they now can never assimilate into British culture. So now we have to spend money and time and resources educating those local areas. We have to just call a spade a spade. We have failed those people. Rather than say, come and integrate, here's what we believe in, here's where British society is moving to. They are trapped in communities.
We do need assimilation, but let's look at what this independent MP is saying, and you were being reasonably fair to him, Patrick. Actually, there's form here. People like George Galloway have played politics in Muslim communities with issues like this, and I think he's acting similarly. And I do not accept his argument that because of cultural sensitivity, you can't move in this area. There are too many instances over the last 10, 20 years of cultural sensitivity leading to appalling practices that are completely unacceptable.
But did Labour not play into that as well? I mean, we've had sort of instances before where people haven't necessarily, particularly in the Labour areas, and I remember Sarah Champion, the Labour MP, talking about grooming, an issue that was within the Muslim community. She was absolutely shunned by the Labour Party, and she was actually shining light on a big issue within the community.
There have been many Labour MPs who've stood their ground on this issue. Anne Cryer...
But the party, you're right, individuals did, but the party absolutely turned the back because they were trying to call them...
The opportunity is now for the government of the day, which happens to be the Labour government, to actually do something about this. And I mean, you know, is anyone in disagreement that they should? I mean, should we ban it?
Yes, we should. Yes, we should. And I hope and believe, you know, Shabana Mahmood referred to the fact that there's a Law Commission report on that marriage. The government is going to consider the response, and I hope that will lead to a ban. But you know, it wasn't addressed during 14 years that the Tories were in power, and it was, Esther, it was an issue during those years because people were debating it.
Bill was an MP. Controversial, shouldn't it? This should not be controversial. You should say ban it. It's not controversial. Look, we're helping the next generation of children.
Bill, you served under Tony Blair. He was a man that just used to say it as it is. That was his whole policy, right? And he's been doing that recently. Surely, if Keir Starmer should learn something from that, if he wants to look, I mean, his approval ratings today, the government is down to -41%, right? Why can't we just say what a spade is? Why can't we just say, look, this is a terrible terrible idea. Shabana Mahmood, please go out and say, this is terrible, we will ban it, but we'll get back to you when we are going to.
You don't make government on the hoof. My understanding is this issue has just come up in Parliament today. The government is not within 24 hours.
Stance on it, Bill. Come on.
And that will come.
You're being silly defending it.
No,
I'm not.
It's brand new, just come up if you're saying the Tories didn't do something on 14 years, so it's been around for a while.
It was raised in Parliament today for the first time.
That's true, but I think you can just come out
All
and
right,
say
a lively start. It is fascinating, though. Just the final word to say on this is when millions of people went out and voted for Labour, in good faith. If you could fast forward and think exactly where we are today with the pensioners' issue, with the farmers' issue, and with a non-stance as it currently stands when it comes to first cousin marriage, I think the polls might have been slightly different those months ago.
I think people would say it. They expected extra money for the health service. They needed a big boost for the minimum wage. They needed a major house building programme, and that's happening.
Good, lovely bit of balance from Big Bill there. Fantastic. Right. Anyway, it's time now for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway this year. Your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. Here's how it could all be yours.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, I've got a lot of stuff coming your way, including this.
And a chap got shot. And all of a sudden it brought home to me, and I was standing next to him. It could have been me. And I was it shook me up a bit.
It was a pleasure earlier to speak to 91-year-old war veteran Michael Lyons, who started a campaign this winter to remember all of our brave servicemen and women who've suffered from PTSD whilst risking their lives to defend this country. I'll be playing you that moving interview very, very shortly. You won't want to miss it. But first, GB News can exclusively reveal tonight that the Labour government is planning on sending millions in taxpayers' cash to the French for 6 more years. So whatever happened to stopping the small boats? Does the PM really want to end Britain's migration crisis? Going head-to-head on this are the former Tory MEP, David Campbell-Bannerman, and the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Our next guest has a rather unique career story. She was working at a pub aged 18 and Holly Farmer was spotted by a modelling scout, and it turned out to be her lucky day.
Scott Yos-Clark sent this message to Holly.
Holly, 18, 5'10", she does not belong in a pub. And I absolutely love that, Holly, because it's a bit like Dirty Dancing, where it's like, you can't put baby in the corner. Holly does not belong in a pub. You belong on the catwalk. What was that moment like for you when you were scouted by yours?
It was crazy. I have to say I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I was just on my lunch break. I was working at a pub, so... I was on my lunch break walking, going to Primark, and...
You're going to Primark?
Got stopped by yours.
How did that interaction go?
Well, first question was, how tall are you? So, 5'10".
Very much that.
Yeah, then he gave me his card and asked, explained everything, that he's a model scout, obviously.
Yeah, because generally when I scout, especially when I get close to that person, I tend to look in their eyes, and when you see something there, it's like everything works on the face, and then the eyes gives you away.
Well, you've spotted a gem in Holly. I mean, you can tell even when you walked in, you are built to be a model.
I did my first fashion week here in London and then went to Paris, and it was really fun. Wow. Now it's my full-time job. It's a bit crazy, to be honest, to be able to say that modelling is my full-time
Yeah.
job now. Some brands will ask you to be a bit more serious, and then others not.
So it depends on the client's request as well. Ellie, give us your best model face, ready? 3, I wonder if we can come back. 3, 2, 1. Very nice.
High fashion.
Yeah.
But you guys do all like contorted moves, don't you?
Yeah.
Like all this high fashion. Do yours?
I'm just permanently living in model
You actually
model
are,
world.
though. He actually
this
does.
is it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. My interview with a brave veteran who has started a brilliant campaign to remember soldiers with PTSD this winter is on the way. But first, do Labour really want to stop those boats? It's time now for the head-to-head. GB News can exclusively reveal tonight that French politicians are set to spend British taxpayers' cash for the next 6 years as part of efforts to stop small boats crossing the Channel from France. The British taxpayer has already handed over more than 450 million quid on defences such as extra police, drones, border security between 2022 and 2025. That's despite migrant crossings hitting record highs. But now we can reveal for the first time that the French will be discussing plans to spend cash between 2026 and 2029 with our Home Office officials. Now, there are fears that they will still want the same, meaning that the British taxpayer is going to be on the hook for hundreds of millions of pounds more. Well, that comes just days after the Home Secretary doubled the amount of time that successful asylum seekers can stay in migrant hotels from 28 days to 56, even after Keir Starmer promised to end the use of those hotels during the election campaign. Home Office figures published last week showed that the number of migrants being held in hotels has jumped 20% in the 3 months to September. That is, of course, after Labour won the general election. Labour ministers are also expected to splash yet more taxpayer cash funding for lawyers to represent asylum seekers to help clear this massive backlog of appeals. And we all know what that means, don't we? Well, by the end of September this year, there were more than 62,000 claims awaiting an outcome at the first-tier tribunal courts, where most asylum appeals are considered. That has more than doubled in a year. Well, you look at all of that in the round, and I think it's fair enough to ask tonight, are Labour really serious about stopping the small boats? Let me know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. You can also go to Twitter or X at GB News and go and vote in our poll. Going head-to-head on this now, though, the former Tory MEP David Campbell-Bannerman and the former editor of Labour List is Peter Edwards. Thank you very much, chaps. Great to have you on the show. David Campbell-Bannerman, I'll start with you. Well, when it looks as though we're at least entertaining giving the French money for another 6 years to help not stop the boats, do you think they really do want to clamp down on illegal immigration?
Well, of course, Labour, they've got their new 6 priorities, millstones or milestones. I've lost track of what it is now, but they haven't even mentioned immigration and controlling immigration. I don't think they're serious, Patrick, and you're very right about the cost of this, because it's about a new hospital every 3 years we're giving to France to try and control this. But without a deterrent like Rwanda, it's going to go on and on and on, and the costs will go on and on and on. And the more that come over, as you just pointed out in that report, then the more the cost of accommodation and processing it all. So it's a disaster. We've got to find a way of stopping it. Rwanda would have done that.
Peter, look, potentially now hundreds of millions of pounds more to the French, longer. Double the amount of time, actually, you're allowed to stay in a migrant hotel once you've been granted asylum. More money to lawyers to, frankly, help people stay in the country. Labour doesn't want to stop the migrant crisis, does it?
I think Labour does want to stop the migrant crisis, and this is why it's done a deal. And I feel maybe your critique amid the Harambe thing doesn't quite add up, because you can either say Labour is really serious and is spending too much money on a deal, or you can say Labour's not serious and hasn't got a deal. So there is a deal with France.
Let me qualify that, Peter, and I'll come back to you. I just want to qualify that, Peter, because they said that they'd be able to work with our European friends. They said that they'd be able to smash the gangs. They said that they had a plan. And as it currently stands, that plan is just to give more money to the French, which is an acknowledgement that they're going to continue queuing up in Calais. That will be my point, Peter, but go on.
Well, it's tough in politics, but sometimes you just have to be truthful and say migrants are going to continue remaining in Calais. I wouldn't use the phrase queuing up, but they're not going to vanish overnight because we had a general election. I doubt they care about the outcome of the general election. I mean, your points don't stack up. So Rwanda, whether you think it's evil as I do or just plain daft, it didn't even get to the starting line. The Rwanda agreement was never implemented. On rights for legal representation, it's pretty much every country, every democracy in the world that allows someone legal representation when they're troubling authorities. Springing to mind is maybe only Saddam Hussein's Iraq that didn't allow representation, or Zimbabwe under Mugabe. I think we can aim to do a bit better than that in a mature democracy. And finally, and I know you only want to go Dale, but if France is just over the channel, do we talk to them or do we just have a falling out of them? Because it's an international problem and requires an international solution.
Oh, well, David, I mean, actually, the other news today is that Germany is apparently considering leaving the ECHR to help deal with the migrant crisis, and our Prime Minister's ruled that out. So, you can add that one to the list, David.
Yeah, I met a German justice at the ECHR when I was an MEP, and she admitted that it's who has the last word is the problem with the ECHR, and that should be nation states, whether it's UK or Germany. But I think I'd just ask Peter, where's your deterrence? How do you deter people coming? Because otherwise it's like running a bath that's overflowing and you're not turning the taps off. How are you going to turn the taps off, Peter?
Oh, go on, Peter, because of all the things we've outlined here so far, every single one of those could be argued is actually more of an incentive to come to Britain than to deter people to stay away.
Well, I don't agree. So I think the Rwanda scheme was not a deterrent because it never began. And in the same period, to try and be even-handed, the facts credited with any reduction numbers were bilateral agreements with other countries like Albania for returns. The idea of offshore processing, remember, which is both wicked and never even begun, couldn't serve as a deterrent because it never began. So I think, to answer David's questions, what are the deterrents? Tougher action in Calais, which, yes, involves spending some money to save more, and more bilateral agreements, which is exactly what the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said she's pursuing.
All right, David, you want to come back to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you have to take a leaf out of the book of the Labour government in Australia that tried to get rid of offshore processing, which is what Rwanda is, through the Nauru Island and various other islands. And they got rid of it under one Labour Prime Minister, and they had to bring it back under another, under Gillard. And that was an admission that, you have to have a deterrence, otherwise they keep coming and the numbers overwhelm you. And I would point out on Rwanda, I don't think it's evil when Germany actually is looking at taking over our bases in Rwanda that were planned for our people being sent out there. But and the EU was actually quite pro the whole idea. So I don't think that's consistent.
Look, Peter, final word to you on this. I mean, the Labour Party likes to bang on about the 700 million quid that was supposedly wasted on this Rwanda deal that never got a flight off the ground apart from one chap who volunteered to go, OK? And so, that's what they say. They also say that there's this £22 billion black hole, and that's why some pensioners have to freeze to death and why some farmers have to go out of business. But we do have seemingly hundreds of millions of pounds for the French. We do have spaces for 20% more people in migrant hotels. We do have the funds for the taxpayer, for lawyers to help people stay in the country indefinitely. I mean, they do have the money, Peter. They just don't want to give it to British people. Is that unfair?
Yeah, I think that's a really daft comment. Whether your view about reducing migrant crossings is due to concern over the safety of migrants or concern over the integrity of borders, I haven't heard any politician or any TV host say we can send this, we can resolve this at zero cost. Literally every party in the whole of the United Kingdom, even Reform, accepts that tackling this problem involves spending some money. So to suggest that you can do it for zero cost is loopy.
All right, but both of you think we could obviously carry this on, but thank you very much. We are out of time. Take care. It's Peter Evans, former Minister of Labour list, and David Campbell-Bannerman as well, former Tory MEP. Thank you very, very much. Right, now during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Every single day, they have a very special message for you to celebrate this Christmas period.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 10.
I'm the Reverend Mike Millman, and a very warm welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. The Office of National Statistics reckons that we sell so many Brussels sprouts in the UK over the Christmas season that if you were to begin lining them up in central London, you would get all the way to Sydney, Australia. That is a lot of Brussels sprouts. Now, whether you like Brussels sprouts or not, there is no denying that Christmas is a wonderful season for food. And rightly so, because food is right at the heart of the mystery of what Christmas is all about. See, food reminds us that we are dependent creatures. We need a life source, you and I, given to us from outside of us. And we see that in so many of the details of the Christmas story. Jesus, he's born in Bethlehem, which means house of bread. As Jesus is born, he is laid in a manger, which is a feeding trough. Why? Because just as we need physical food to sustain our temporary life, Jesus is bread for the soul, bringing eternal life to all who receive him in faith.
Well, you can see all of our very special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by going to gbnews.com/Advent. Have a very Merry Christmas, everybody. Coming up, Birmingham City Council has been forced to shell out hundreds of millions of pounds to settle historic equal pay disputes. Well, frankly, it's the reason why they were declared effectively bankrupt last year. It's also the reason why Birmingham residents will see their council tax bills skyrocket while services are severely slashed. But should the council really have had to cough up millions for an equal pay dispute? Councillor Miriam Jenkins certainly doesn't think so. But first...
And a chap got shot. And all of a sudden it brought home to me, and I was standing next to him. It could have been me. And I was a bit... It shook me up a bit.
That's 91-year-old war veteran Michael Lyons there, who started a campaign to remember all of our brave servicemen and women who suffered from PTSD whilst risking their lives to defend this country. I was very, very grateful to have a little catch-up with him earlier today. He spoke very, very movingly as well. I'm also going to be talking at 10 p.m. about this, frankly, quite defamatory, very defamatory report that's come out accusing myself and GB News of rampant Islamophobia. We cannot be scared into silence. Stay tuned.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, the fog thickening up in places overnight and slow to clear across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular tomorrow. Elsewhere, much of England and Wales is dry and cloudy. High pressure is keeping things that way. Not many big changes with the weather, but the wind's still coming in from the northeast, still feeding in a few showers across southeast England overnight. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry, bit of drizzly rain heading into Shetland, but it's the fog thickening up across southwest Scotland and the west of Northern Ireland that could cause some problems. Freezing fog as temperatures fall well below freezing. We could see negative double digits through some sheltered glens across Scotland. That fog, particularly in and around Glasgow and across the west of Northern Ireland, may stick around for all of tomorrow. Certainly a dull, damp and drizzly start across Shetland, but actually some of the highest temperatures here to begin the day. We could be -9, -10 through some of the sheltered glens across Scotland. A cold start for Northern Ireland. That fog, particularly in the west, again, stubborn and slow to clear. And this cloud is pretty stubborn across England and Wales. Maybe some breaks in the cloud across northwest Wales, the far northwest of England. So chance of a bit of sunshine here and there, but mostly just staying cloudy, but largely dry. It's in the far south where we'll continue just to see a few showers and still a fairly brisk and chilly wind. Elsewhere, the wind's pretty light, generally a bit lighter than today. Temperatures still touch below average, 6 or 7 Celsius for most. Sunnier skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but temperatures here only 4 or 5 at best. And again, where that fog sticks, we're not going to get above freezing. Some of that fog thickening up again Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So again, that could be slow to clear on Thursday. Thicker cloud across these eastern and central parts of England on Thursday. Some drizzly rain is likely here, so quite dank. And again, not feeling very warm with temperatures, for the most part, single digits.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Coming up, should councils really have to pay out millions in equal pay claims? And we're going to be talking about that report that frankly accuses me and others of Islamophobia. But first, 91-year-old war veteran and volunteer for the Royal British Legion, Michael Lyons, has launched a campaign this winter calling on servicemen past and present to light a candle in remembrance of all the soldiers who suffer from PTSD. Michael himself joined the army in 1952 and served this country in Syria, Libya and Egypt. And I had the pleasure of speaking to Michael about his campaign a little earlier today. Hello, Michael. Thank you very much for joining us today on GB News. I was hoping that you might be able to explain to our viewers and listeners a little bit about what you'd like to happen this Christmas and why it means so much to you.
Well, what it is, this Christmas, we've just had the era of the poppy, and I've looked at the December as the era of the candle. Now, the candle to me it brings back love and memories of people. And what it is this Christmas, we've been campaigning for the soldiers in the First World War that lost their minds. They called it shell shock or with stress or whatever. And they got forgotten, way forgotten. Nobody cared about them. Now, what I've been trying to do is to restore them back, to get their name and memory and service reinstored, and so they can be united back to their families. But the trouble is, all we've got is their name. What we'd like it to go out. As they say, the one we're talking about right now, it was a Sergeant Alfred Charles Cartwright. He was a Grenadier Guardsman. He was in a Caney asylum, and they removed him from a military grave to make way for housing. And he was put into a plot for asylum inmates. Now he lost his right for a military grave, which is wrong, and he went AWOL. So what we're trying to do now is to get him reinstated.
And why is it so important, Michael, do you think? Because I understand that you also want people in schools to maybe be lighting candles. Why is it important for that younger generation to know about this?
Well, it is. Well, tell you the truth, what I've got with schools, up at where I live now, New Eddington, in 2014, we had a remembrance service for these chaps that was in an asylum in Cane Hill. And the schools come to the service, which was, we had Lady Emma Kitchener and Lord Julian Fellows at the service. And we had 10 schools up here become guardians of the spirits of these soldiers. I've just told them about them, but they took them in. So each school has got a name of a soldier in each school. So they know the meaning of you know, when people suffer from this brain damage, that they could be their relation. This is what I'm trying to get over as well. That when we talk about these people, whenever their names, I'm hoping that they can relate to them and say, well, Robbie, this could be my uncle or my friend of mine or whatever.
Michael, just on that then, would you mind telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about your service and what you experienced?
Well, I was called I was a national serviceman. I joined the East Surrey Regiment. And then from the East Surrey Regiment, years ago, you couldn't get into the parachute regiment unless you belonged to a regiment and you've done a course and you joined the parachute, well, which I done. I joined the parachute, the 3rd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment. I served in Suez. That was me actual. Well, did go around the country. I was in Cyprus, Transjordan, Derna, all over. And as I say, I learned a lot them days. When I went into the army, I was one of them people that, you know, didn't want to undress in front of people, you know, with a caper. But it brought me out, and I understood it, and as I say, I learned a lot.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, for your service and for everything that you've done. And you really are our greatest generation, and you are a hero as well. And if people want to support people who are sadly no longer with us or who are still with us but are suffering from PTSD or the effects of war and conflict, what would you like them to do then? Light a candle throughout this Christmas period?
What I'd like them to do is to light a candle over this Christmas period and put it, because what I want them to do is the people then can say, well, what's that candle lit for? I know it's Christmas. And they can say, well, it's for remembrance of a soldier that suffered from PTSD and got forgotten. But the main aim is that we want to return them to the family. We want this Christmas be a Christmas when these people suffered that are now way gone, but their spirit is still here.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and we're going to be hearing more from him in the coming weeks. But coming up at 10 p.m, the Trojan Horse is real. It is here. We let it in. It is time to deport that Trojan Horse right now. The Muslim Council of Britain have come for me and GB News, saying they're Islamophobic and a danger to society. They've smeared me, they've misquoted me, and they have made serious errors. Well, I take this stuff very seriously, and I'm going to be hitting back at that at 10 p.m. But first, Birmingham City Council has been forced to shell out hundreds of £millions to settle a historic equal pay dispute. I'm going to be talking about why on earth they've managed to go bust. Stay tuned.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Dora Carrington is not known to lots of people, and very few pieces are in public collections. So you have had a great deal of work to do to put this exhibition together.
Absolutely. It's been, next year, it will be 30 years since the last major exhibition of Carrington's work, which happened in 1995 at the Barbican Gallery. And I guess if people know Carrington's work, they might have seen the film that took place that year, that came out that year, starring Emma Thompson as Carrington and Jonathan Pryce as Lytton Strachey, who was her main kind of key relationship in her life. And that, in a way, dramatised a lot of those relationships. And so people will often know her life as much as her art. There's only 16 works in public collections, and so apart from chances such as the big billboard campaign you mentioned 10 years ago, there have been very few chances to actually see her work in the flesh. And so what this exhibition does is bring together around 80 works by Carrington and a few of her key contemporaries, providing a new generation really a chance to see and enjoy her work. She was one of the most remarkable of her generation at the Slade School of Art. She won several prizes for her drawing and her draftsmanship. And in the first room of the exhibition, we have some of the work, for example, a couple of female nudes that she painted when she was at the Slade, and they really are kind of quite outstanding.
One of the things that's been said is that in her landscapes, she's sometimes painting the human body as well as the landscape. Is that something that occurred to you? Can you stand up that?
Yes, I mean, one of her most famous paintings we have of Spain has. It's very much like you could liken it to the female form. You know, the kind of the
delicately put.
Yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very shortly, I hit back at these ridiculous smears of Islamophobia against myself and GB News. But first, Birmingham City Council has been forced to shell out up to 760 million quid after reaching a deal to settle historical equal pay claims. It's an industrial dispute, and it relates to female-dominated roles, such as cleaners and catering staff. Last year, the Labour-run council declared itself effectively bankrupt, and obviously it is now the people of Birmingham who have to pay the price. I'm joined now by Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance at Birmingham City Council, Councillor Miriam Jenkins. Thank you very much. We are a bit pressed for time here now, sorry about that. But, I mean, what's going on? How come they've had to go bust over this?
Well, first of all, Patrick, it's worth bearing in mind that even without the equal pay, they would still have gone bust. And of course, councils can't go bust in the sort of true sense of the word, but it's a useful form of shorthand to explain the situation. Even without equal pay, as a result of a decade of mismanagement from the Labour administration, they were overspending on the current account by 300 million a year. And we knew about that 15 months ago. So they would have to have made those savings anyway. And even now, 15 months on, they're still overspending by 200 million a year. So they've only made a third of the savings that they would have had to have made anyway. Now, if we then put equal pay on top of that, this is something that dates back to the end days of the Blair administration, where they brought in rules to say that if you had a predominantly male-orientated group of people doing one job and a predominantly female group of people doing another job, you could make a direct comparison between the two, even though they were doing entirely different jobs. And the problem arose in Birmingham because the bin men were given preferential terms over other groups of work.
So bin men were paid more, in a very loose sense here, than, say, female cleaners, even though they were doing two different jobs, and people could argue that there should be a different pay scale for those jobs. And what's ended up having to happen is that you've had to, backdate the pay of the female cleaners in order to match that of the male bin men.
Yes, 6 years. But it's also worth bearing in mind, yes, it wasn't so much being paid more. They were given perks and benefits that weren't made available to, say, for example, the cleaners, but it could be other groups as well. And what's particularly annoying about this is that this is not a terribly difficult problem to solve if you act promptly. Right back in 2017, we said to the Labour administration, if you do what you're proposing to do in terms of giving these additional benefits to the bin men, you will create an equal pay problem. So they knew about this 6 or 7 years ago.
And they did it
And
anyway.
to solve it, what you have to do is you have to put a job evaluation scheme into place.
Okay.
If you put a proper job evaluation scheme into place, you can prevent the equal pay liability arising. But they didn't. Right? And they only started on this about 12 months ago. So for the last 7 years, even though we told them this is going to create a huge liability, the last 7 years, they allowed it to build up.
Well, and it's ultimately the people of Birmingham who have to suffer with increased council tax and reduced services. And, you know, I'm not for anyone being underpaid, by the way, for the jobs that they do, and certainly not on the grounds of gender or race or anything else. But you have to look at this and you wonder, was this worth it? Because in the round now, everybody appears to suffer. Of course, the Labour Council will say that they had no choice. And indeed, that's what they do say. But thank you very much. I'm very sorry that we're pressed for time this evening, Miriam, but thank you so much for your time. Miriam Jenkins there, who is the Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance at Birmingham City Council. A remarkable story involving Britain's second city. But coming up at 10 p.m, a slightly different council, the Muslim Council of Britain, have come for me. They've come for GB News. They say that we're Islamophobic and a danger to society. However, unfortunately for them, they appear to have smeared me and misquoted me, and they've made some serious errors. I take this stuff very seriously, and I'm going to be hitting back at this in just a few short minutes. We will not be scared into silence. I will not be scared into silence. I strongly suggest that you don't go anywhere. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Clear skies overnight across the north will allow things to turn very frosty. Also some thick fog patches for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Further south, staying largely dry but quite cloudy. This weather front still generating quite a few showers across the far southeast, parts of Essex, even as far north as Suffolk. Those showers feeding in across Kent, the London area, into parts of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But away from the southeast, it is generally dry. Clearer skies here. That's where the fog is going to thicken up. Southwest Scotland, also western parts of Northern Ireland. That fog likely to be pretty dense and linger well into tomorrow. For England and Wales, we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures generally above freezing. But a wet start for parts of the southeast. Still a few showers coming in, particularly across parts of Kent, feeding all the way down across the Channel Islands too. But elsewhere, generally dry and cloudy for England and Wales. Some frost across Cumbria and certainly further north and west across Scotland and Northern Ireland. The frost widespread and some dense patches of fog. Parts of the central belt, particularly to the west, southwest Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. And where that fog forms through the night, it could be very slow to clear tomorrow. Quite a lot of cloud across the far north. Some drizzly rain heading its way towards Shetland. The showers in the southeast, well, still a few feeding in, but tending to fizzle out generally through the day. Some breaks in the cloud for North Wales, northwest England. Bit of sunshine possible here. Temperatures 6 or 7 Celsius. Still feeling cold with that wind coming in from the North Sea across the southeast. That's still there on Wednesday, as is the possibility of the odd shower across the south. Fog again for parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again it could last all day. If it does, temperatures will struggle to get above freezing, but away from the fog, much of Scotland, Northern Ireland having another sunny day on Wednesday. Most of England and Wales staying fairly cloudy. Bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home? Talking about? Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy. Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, are a foreign national, an illegal immigrant, an ISIS bride, or a member of the British Muslim community, it seems like you will get what you need. Well, the Muslim Council of Britain have come for me and GB News, saying that we're Islamophobic and a danger to society. They have, however, misquoted me, and they have made some serious errors. The Trojan Horse is real. It is here. We let it in. It is time to deport that Trojan horse right now. I take this stuff very seriously, and I'll be hitting back, also tonight.
I genuinely believe it's time for a change in direction, and that change in direction is reform, and Nigel Farage.
A huge moment in British politics as Reform get a billionaire treasurer and the donations are rolling in. And can I just say as well, in the last few minutes, it's emerged that Nigel Farage is now odds-on favourite at the bookies to win the next election. Remarkable stuff. We'll talk about that. On my panel this evening, I am joined by the Conservative MP for Tatton, it's Esther McVeigh, political commentator Alex Armstrong and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Oh, and to be honest, this is quite disturbing.
I want to be the first person to be with 1,000 guys in one day.
A porn actress has caused serious concern over plans to sleep with 1,000 men in a single day. But what does this say about modern society? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. I'm not going to stand here and let people call me an Islamophobe. I won't be scared into silence. Next.
Good evening. It's just gone 10 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB newsroom. The alleged killer of a US health insurance boss has tussled with police officers as they were escorting him to court. Luigi Mangione, in handcuffs, shouted to reporters outside the Pennsylvania courthouse.
Completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and lived experience.
The 26-year-old has been charged with murder after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in a targeted attack in New York last week. Police arrested Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania after a customer recognised him from media reports. Back in the UK, billionaire Nick Candy has pledged a 7-figure donation to Reform UK after announcing he'll become the party's new treasurer in the new year. The property tycoon, who resigned from the Conservative Party over what he called too many broken promises, will now help raise funds ahead of May's local elections. In other news, 2 people have been taken to hospital after an explosion in a terraced house in Ilford. It's after a video emerged online showing the moment that the house seemed to explode before it erupted into flames. 8 fire engines and around 60 firefighters were deployed to the scene as the roof and first floor of the 2-storey property were alight. The London Fire Brigade say Leigh Street is closed between Eastern Avenue and Vicarage Road, and they're asking the public to avoid the area. Former England rugby player Tom Voice is believed to have died after going into a river in his car in Northumberland. Northumbria police said it received a report on Sunday the 43-year-old had not returned home following an evening with his friends. It is believed he attempted to cross Aberwick Ford in his car, which has then been pulled along a current of the River Alne. Police have since recovered the car, but officers have not found Mr. Voice, and it is believed he was carried away while attempting to escape and has died. Avanti West Coast train managers have voted to strike for 3 days over the Christmas period. They will walk out on the 22nd, 23rd and 29th of December for the London to Scotland service after rejecting the train company's proposals for rest day working arrangements. A spokesperson for Avanti West Coast warned that customers will now face significant disruption because of these strikes. And the fathers of 2 murdered policewomen have hailed the new Elizabeth emblem as a fitting tribute to their daughters and others who've died in the line of duty. Bryn Hughes and Paul Bone both received the emblem from the King during the first presentation of the award, following the deaths of their daughters PC's Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone, who were murdered after answering a 999 call. Charles spent an hour with the families of the public servants, chatting about the loved ones they lost and handing over the nation's gratitude in the form of the emblem. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. I have a message for everyone. I will not be scared into silence when it comes to talking about radical Islam, British culture and multiculturalism. Today, there was a highly inaccurate and defamatory report published that accused GB News and myself of being an anti-Muslim hate channel and Islamophobic. This report was put forward by the Centre for Media Monitoring, so it sounds really official. But who is that, really? Well, it's a project by the Muslim Council of Britain. Now, there are numerous inaccuracies in this report, including this quote that they've put my name to, OK? So there we are. I did not say that. That is not me. That is false. And I think it calls into question the validity of some of the things that they say. They essentially claim that I was being Islamophobic to say that I think there is a Trojan horse in Britain that wants to harm us. Well, the report cherry-picks a quote where I say that people hate our way of life and want to harm us, all right? But shall we have a little look at what I'm actually talking about? I'm talking about the Iranian regime planting terrorist sleeper cells in Britain, something our own intelligence and security services are on record warning us about. Iran has been at war with us for decades. They have militant sleeper cells in Britain ready to rise up and attack us, and the taxpayer has been funding them. That's the allegation. This is the very definition of a Trojan horse. That's not about Muslims, is it? That's about Iranian terrorists. They make reference to me joking about the now disgraced former Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, doing more to promote Islam than Christianity. It was in relation to this clip. The latest allegations of fake asylum seeker baptisms for young Muslim men, GB News has obtained leaked footage of the Archbishop actually conducting one of these asylum seeker ceremonies himself.
Greetings to Muslims at the start of the month of Ramadan. I wish you peace and joy as you begin this extraordinary and special time of prayer, fasting and spiritual reflection. thank you for the huge contribution that Muslims across our nation make to our society.
Yeah, all right, OK, that was a joke. That's obviously not really well be doing at baptism, is it? It's him wishing everybody a happy Ramadan. This is all from the last few days. So, the question stands, I think, is the Archbishop of Canterbury doing more to promote Islam than Christianity? It is a widely held belief amongst many Christians that Welby, who has been forced to resign amid a child abuse scandal, was not doing a particularly good job of promoting Christianity in the UK. That is not a comment on Islam, it's a comment on Justin Welby and his priorities. Now, they accuse me of saying that Sharia-compliant pensions are one step away from blasphemy laws and that is apparently Islamophobic. Well, shall we have a little look again at what I actually said? The Independent Alliance, aren't they? And they're putting massive pressure on Labour. Some of them were backed by the Muslim Vote Group, which issued Labour with a list of 18 demands before the election. Those demands included things like adopting a new Islamophobia definition that many feel is just a blasphemy law. They want Sharia-compliant pensions and to remove Michael Gove's extremism definition. Now, most people in Britain will want to stand up to this kind of politics and weed it out. Oh, I'm sorry to say this, but what have we actually seen since then? This government not ruling out actual blasphemy laws.
Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government. Acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society. Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
OK, then. They say that GB News risks inciting violence against Muslims. But as we've seen, there are serious inaccuracies in this report, and I think that the authors should consider the consequences of labelling presenters like myself as Islamophobic, because there could very well be serious consequences to that indeed, couldn't there? The report makes reference to me talking about two-tier policing in Britain and that perhaps sometimes elements of the British Muslim community get an easier ride. Well, that is an honestly held belief, I'm afraid, as clips like this incident outside Rochdale Police Station following the Manchester Airport incident highlight.
We saw you! We know you're in there! Come out! Explain yourself! Why has only one officer been suspended? What about the rest of them?
I was very surprised that there did not appear to be a strong police response to that, and I do think that the police were too afraid to act there. Now, they say that GB News is responsible for 50% of the media's coverage on Islam. Well, I'm afraid that some of that will include things like Pakistani grooming gangs, the Batley Grammar School incident, where a teacher has been forced into hiding by a staunchly Muslim community. It will include things like an autistic child's mum being forced to apologise to Muslim elders after her son scuffed a copy of the Quran. It will include things like armed police at Christmas markets across the country to protect us from radical Islamists. And I'm afraid it will include things like we literally saw today in the House of Commons, where a Muslim independent MP stood up and said that he didn't really think that incestuous cousin marriage should be illegal in Britain.
It is extremely common in the Middle East and in South Asia. The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive, something that helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold.
I make no apology for talking about that stuff. I make no apology for standing up for British culture, British values and our British way of life. The report states GB News was particularly focused on domestic stories on topics involving Islam, in comparison with our rival channels, where foreign news contributed a greater amount of their output. Well, the clue's in the name, lads, all right? We are GB News, OK? We focus primarily on what's happening right here. And this is why they're actually coming for us. This is why they're actually coming for us. Because the people of Britain are voting with their TV remotes. We are now beating Sky News, all right? And we're snapping at BBC News' heels. We have a huge audience, and it's growing all the time. This is what they're scared of. So they try to smear us. They make other claims about me in this report that are misleading, and I have evidence here to prove that. But frankly, we haven't got all night. So I'll finish with this. I am a presenter on GB News. Great Britain means a great deal to me. We have had documented incidents where the fear of stoking racial tensions or being called Islamophobic has prevented justice being served when it comes to things like grooming gangs. And there's the proof of it, right there, in that headline, in those official reports. I have no desire to be unfair to Muslims. They contribute a huge amount of good to this country, whether it's in the public sector or in wider society. But at the same time, I will not succumb to the fear of being labelled as something that I am not, an Islamophobe. And I will not shy away from doing interviews with people like Britain's most famous head teacher when she spoke about the death threats her and her colleagues received for wanting to stop a Muslim prayer room in her school.
We're getting all kinds of death threats, and we had a bomb scare. The police had to come and search the school for bombs. We had all kinds of, one of my black teachers was so badly racially abused. You know, she was called the N-word and the C-word and compared to a monkey and all kinds of horrible things.
You can say what you like and you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm going to keep doing my job. Let's get our thoughts on my panel this evening. We are joined by the Tory MP for Tatham. We've got the wonderful Esther McVeigh, we've got political commentator Alex Armstrong and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Esther, look, what do you make of some of the findings of, alleged findings of this report and some of the language used, do you think?
Well, I believe GB News is about free speech. I think it's about time we had free speech. I think people want to hear it. I think it's good that you shine a spotlight on things. I've always thought the politically correct liberal left never... If they don't like to hear it, they don't want anybody to hear it. And as you said, they do personal spears. But I did print out the document, all of it, and I went straight away to who were the people sort of in the foreword who were making these assumptions who'd done it. And it was Gavin Esler. So I kind of thought, well, he doesn't come free of views. This is the guy who wanted to reverse Brexit. He didn't like it and he wanted to go into the UK, the EU. So he does actually have a political view himself. And then I read what he'd written. He said, I had never seen GB News before. It was a shock. I watched an hour of babble, switched off, and I got back to him. I said, I refuse to do this assignment. I don't like it. So he came to the station with a viewpoint, with a view on the world, and he didn't like it. And then this is what he's doing. And I looked at the monitoring. I looked at what they said, and I just thought they didn't like what you were saying. They didn't like the different opinions you had on, and this was a view, a way of him stifling it.
Bill, I'll come to you on this, all right? Now, you know, I fully accept that we deal with the most controversial topics out there. And I fully accept that people will not agree with me on a huge amount of things. And I hold my hands up to that, OK? But, you know, this report, what's your making of it? Do you think we have got lessons to learn?
Well, look, I've been appearing as a panellist on GB News for about 15 months, and my experience is it's not Islamophobic. It's not unbalanced. There is always a left presence. You might argue it's 1 to 2, but there is always a left presence on the panels, and you are allowed, rightly, to argue your case. And I'm a passionate believer in free speech and open debate. And sometimes there are criticisms to be made of all communities, including Muslim communities. And I think that's part of what this report doesn't like. However, if there are lessons to be learnt for GB News, I think GB News might want to look about, 50% of coverage of stories around Islam. Is that proportionate? Is it justified? Is there a case for more Muslim voices as panellists on GB News? And also, and you and I have locked horns on this before, Patrick, two-tier policing. I think you're wrong. I think, when black people are 9 times more likely to be subjected to stop and search, five times more likely to be subjected to arrest involving physical restraint, if anything, two-tier is the other way. However, it's a legitimate matter of debate. And what really concerns me and I fear this report might be part of it, is the ongoing trend towards anything you disagree with, you try to cancel it, and I don't think that's right.
I also just think, well, I'll let you say what you want to say, but just quickly on this, for me, there were a whole host of inaccuracies, including, can I just point out, that quote that they picked out a quote there, they put it in big, bold writing, they put my name at the bottom of it. I did not say that. We've been through the time log. I wasn't in the building. I wasn't in the building. That's shocking.
Can I just say that he talked about junk journalism? I have to say, Gavin, you've written this in your foreword. If you've got it all your facts wrong, I'd say that report was junk journalism.
You know, I mean, I've been in the room many times with you, Patrick, over the last 18 months we've been doing the show, and there's never been Islamophobic comments made on this sofa. Never, never. What they don't like is that the mainstream media don't want to talk about the stories that we cover at GB News. We cover the topics that are difficult, that British people want to hear about, that, as you said, are domestic issues. We don't just cover foreign wars. We talk about things that are happening in this country that have been going on for a very, very long time, that have been brushed under the surface. Now, when we look at the Muslim Council for Britain, I don't want to get myself into too much trouble from here, but you know, the government have distanced themselves from that organisation multiple times. They cut contact with them for not being consistently advocating for British values in a way that they feel is acceptable. And the bit that really got me about this report, there was one particular line. It was that GB News risking inciting violence.
Yeah, that's a worry, I think.
Let's think about what that line has been used to do over the last few months and what they're trying to push the regulator and the government to do. Because I think they had it their way, there wouldn't be just a shutdown of GB News, but half the people here would be behind bars.
Yeah, I think there's concerns there. Again, I make this point now, you know, everyone's entitled to their view. You know, I read this report and I think you're entitled, if you want, to despise me. I don't mind that. That is your right. And you have the freedom to say, I would like it if you got your facts right. Yeah. I would like it if you quoted me correctly. I would like it if you had a robust discussion and debate on it all. But there is a concern for me about some of the language that's used here, that we are, quotes, an anti-Muslim hate channel that is Islamophobic. I'm sorry, I think that's a risk, to start throwing that kind of language out there to presenters and to people who work here. I think that's a risk.
Yeah, no, I do. I think they haven't really thought through their actions there. As you say, what are they doing? Sort of galvanising a sort of a mob, as it were, maybe against people without them knowing. But I think what we've always said on this channel, that we talk about everything. There was no areas that were beyond looking into. We would quite happily talk about everything. And you're quite right, then both sides of the debate come on. And I think that is essential, because I will hear from constituents and they will talk about two-tier policing and they will talk about two-tier care. That's why the name has stuck, because they think that. But actually we'll say, well, let's talk about both sides. Talked about the grooming. For so long, people have said, oh, we didn't want to talk about that. We felt it was too sensitive an issue to talk about. And what happened? Young girls, vulnerable children in Rochdale and various parts of the country, we never looked about what was happening to them because they felt it was too sensitive an issue for sort of a Muslim to talk about that. Well, we're not about that. We say it as it is, and we talk about everything.
Absolutely. And just to want to add, my stepfather's a Muslim, right? He's a practising Muslim. He does not mind what we talk about. He watches the show and he agrees it's ridiculous what's going on. He understands that this is bad for Britain. He didn't come to the UK to witness the same things, the terrible things that have happened in his own country. He wanted to get away from that. But there are plenty of sensible Muslims in this country that would agree with
Patrick, you reference within the report, they talk about hate speech. Yeah. And I think there's a really slippery slope with this focus on what is described as hate speech. My experience as a government minister, and I've argued this before, involved in the Prevent programme, there's only one line you can draw between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and that is violence and the advocacy of violence. And nothing I've heard within the GB News studio comes anywhere close to advocating violence.
But this is about censorship, this report.
Yes,
they don't like what you're talking about. They don't like what you're doing. They basically say Ofcom isn't doing the job. We're going to do it for you, and this is what we want in their recommendations.
And look, one thing I will say about this, which is there is a perfectly legitimate discussion to be had about what I might regard as my priorities on my news radar for the running order of the show. Fine. Now, there'll be plenty of people watching this that might decide that maybe I could have led with a different topic, that maybe I didn't need to lead with illegal immigration that day, or maybe I didn't need to highlight the fact that we've got armed police officers and what does that mean when it comes to radicalism and threat. Fine. But in my view, I happen to think that that's the most important issue of the day. And that is not out of some kind of racism issue, it's out of a public safety issue, it's out of a matter of my news judgment. And for the people who've written this report, fair enough, again, I'll say it, you're entitled to your opinion, don't get me wrong. But more people are watching this show right now than Sky News, probably.
But it's also down...
And that's not my fault.
It's also
down... if Sky News spoke more about it, then maybe they'd get more viewers.
But it's also down to editorial judgment, and all news channels have editorial judgment. And, you know, they're open to scrutiny and challenge, but they have the right to make those judgments.
Exactly, they have the right to, and they have the right to write this report. Again, I would just say it would be nice if maybe there were more accuracies.
Well, they didn't even reach out to the presenters, did they?
I didn't hear anything. I didn't. I cannot find it. They may well have done. If you reached out to me and I've missed it, I apologise.
But they are doing a tour at the moment. They're going on tour with it, aren't they?
I believe so.
So they're making it. They're obviously making their own headlines from it.
Yeah. I'll say it again. Everyone's entitled to their own views, but I'm also entitled to clap back on it, I'm afraid. So there we go. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for an interesting start to the show. But in a massive gear change, it's time now for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway. And this year is your chance to win £50,000. It's the biggest prize we've ever given away. Here's all the details on how you can win that whopping 50 grand in cash.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up, I'm going to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Oh, and look, what does this tell you about modern Britain?
I want to be the first person to be with 1,000 guys in one day.
Yeah, all that and much more very soon. But first...
I genuinely believe it's time for a change in direction, and that change in direction is reform. And Nigel Farage.
Reform UK has a new billionaire backer. That's the property tycoon Nick Candy. He's the latest high-profile name, and apparently Nigel is now, for the first time, the odds-on favourite at some bookies to be the next Prime Minister. I'm going to be joined by Reform UK spokesperson, Gawain Towler. He knows the party like the back of his hand, and he's live very shortly.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, it's interesting because I haven't actually been told specifically what I've done, which has resulted in me being removed from my committee position, which was head of daytime. I started a podcast in September in which I interviewed Charlie Bentley-Astor, who's a detransitioner. I then also interviewed Graham Linehan, and I wrote an article for his Substack. And shortly after that, I was told that I had been suspended, and the university union started an investigation into me. And that very quickly became apparent to me that it was an interrogation of my gender-critical views rather than any sort of misconduct that I had been alleged to.
Right. And Graham Linehan has been outspoken on issues relating to transgender ism, whatever you want to call it, gender ideology. And so perhaps just by having associated yourself with him as a controversial figure, that was why the investigation happened, you suspect?
Yes, and already it's quite clear that guilt by association is a crime that you can commit within university societies. I actually purchased my free speech union membership way before this all happened, when a friend helped me edit the episode with Charlie, and he got in trouble with a separate society who told him that he must disassociate himself from me, and if he didn't, further measures would be taken. So at that point I thought, wow, I better put some damage control in place and purchase my membership in case anything happens to me.
So this decision is made by the student union, right? Is that made up of fellow students? Or who's making this call?
Well, that's actually part of my appeal, so the process has been completely improper. They haven't followed their own guidelines. There are two different guidelines as to whether a complaint is dealt with the society itself, so Leeds Student Radio, or the union, and it's basically been a mishmash of both. So it's been an improper procedure, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's the student union who's decided to remove me.
GB News, the People's Channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Now, I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming very shortly, but first, big day, big day, big day, because the billionaire former Tory party donor and pop star Holly Valance's husband, Nick Candy, has today become the latest high-profile defection to Nigel Farage's Reform UK. The property tycoon renounced his Conservative Party membership. He slammed the party for making too many broken promises. He'll become Reform UK's treasurer in the new year, promising to donate a seven-figure sum. Speaking to GB News earlier today, Candy predicted that the party will win the next general election.
My only job here is I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I helped raise funds for the Tory party. I'm now helping Reform doing it. I think we will break records of that, not because I'm so great at doing it. I believe people want that change. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think Reform UK will be the party in government in 2029 and Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister of this country.
I mean, he's promised, by the way, tens of millions of pounds in other people donating as well. I'm joined now by former Reform UK spokesman Gawain Towler. Gawain, great to have you on, mate. Thank you.
Good evening, good evening.
Some people say, look, this is rich people trying to buy their way into government.
Fiddlesticks. Absolute fiddlesticks. I think that we have a membership of 25 quid a head. In the last 6 months, we've had 70,000 new members. That's where our money comes from. That is where our money comes from. And Nigel's actually been very specific. Recently, he hasn't been sending out begging messages to the membership. But I tell you what, as soon as there's a campaign going, the people want to do something. They want to be involved. Yes, Nick's great. I'm delighted. And yes, he will bring in money. There's no doubt about it.
Tens of millions of pounds, he's saying.
Well, because it's gravity, isn't it? When you've got somebody big, other people who are big go, ooh, I want to be part of that. And they're quite right to. But what ticks us over, what pays for the paper clips, and I was a very expensive paperclip until recently, what pays for those paper clips is the membership.
Right.
The membership. Tens of thousands of people who have recently joined us saying, we want to do something. And we haven't been hitting them with email after email after email, begging their tenors.
Right.
So when we actually have something to spend, something we want to campaign for, then we'll ask them.
It seems like the momentum is now currently with Reform.
Clearly.
I think that's undeniable, given the announcements that we're seeing and some of the defections that we're seeing, and even Suella Braverman's husband joining Reform and campaigning for Reform. The question is sustainability, though, Gawain. I mean, can this really last, or is this going to be a flash in the pan?
Well, it's a damn big flash so far. Of course, that's a question. It is. But I think what happened on July the 5th, when we broke through in first past the post. Up until then, the tribe, as I call it, those people who have voted for parties that have been led by Nigel Farage over the last 20 years, when it came to Westminster elections, went, you can't do it. But we've proven we can. We've proven we can. Now, it's only 5 seats, but it is no longer a wasted vote. People realise that actually, if you vote reform, you can get reform.
Nigel gave an open invitation pretty much to Elon Musk today. Now, this has annoyed a lot of people, right? This has annoyed a lot of people. You know, and look, by the way...
Hey, hold on. Keir Starmer provided an open invitation for Bill Gates and invited him to number 10. So, yeah, right, whatever. I'm sorry. But what was interesting, Nigel pinged out a tweet, a post, an ex-post, with Nick and Nigel with a whole phalanx of snappers in front of them.
Yep.
3 minutes later, Musk is going, in response to it, when's your next election? 3 minutes after Nigel posted, Musk is responding to Nigel saying, when's your next election? Now, personally, Musk has got dozens and dozens and thousands of people he follows, and yet picks it up like that. He's interested. He's interested.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some people will think that's brilliant. Other people will say...
Well, it winds up... Gina Miller famously complained about the idea of Musk giving us cash.
Yeah.
Well, she received 600,000 from George Soros, so...
Right.
Put a pipe in it.
OK. Well, Gina Miller, of course, not here to defend herself, but I'll take your word for it on that one. I'll take your word for it on that one until proved otherwise. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the direction of travel, I mean, as it currently stands, I had this in my ear earlier. This was whilst I was on air, right? Yeah. So I've not physically seen this myself, but apparently Nigel is now odds on with one bookies. I think it's
Ladbrokes
to be the next Prime Minister. There you go.
Now,
as if by magic. What do you make of that?
Honestly. I think people are getting very excited. Now, I'm an loyalist of reform and Farage and all the rest of it. I think it's a bit early to make me... Frankly, those odds, I wouldn't bet on it. They're rubbish odds. I'd far prefer to be far down that scale and then put some money on it, because it's not out of the question. It's not mad. The amount of articles from grown-ups, political grown-ups, in the last 5 days saying... This stuff that Farage has been saying, this stuff that Zia Youssef has been saying, that we can win the next general election, it's not as bad as we thought it was. It really isn't. The polling is going that way. And there's this... I was talking to a very senior journalist today, very senior British political journalist, and he was astounded that the fact that, as you were saying, Suella Braverman's husband joined us, and that knocked what Kemi Badenoch was doing off the pages. The press, the country, and the press are only reporting it because the country's interested in it. They only report that which people will read. And they were more interested in a former Tory cabinet minister's husband joining reform than Suella Braverman meeting the deputy president-elect. Kemi Badenoch meeting the president-elect's deputy president. And so it's clear that currently, and you talk about momentum, and can they keep it up? Is it sustainable? Well, things are only sustainable if they keep on feeding. And I can see no reason why they're not going to keep feeding.
The 18 to 25 is going to be the massive age bracket, or whatever that would equate to now in terms of when they can next vote, the 16th, I suppose. But that's going to be huge. And if the direction of travel there is that you've managed to secure those people at reform, that's going to pose a big problem.
Secure is pushing it.
Or increase, I suppose. But anyway, it remains to be seen. I am now at pains to stress, apparently, that Gina Miller denies taking however much money it was.
All right, well, I'm sorry if I'm...
Soros. There's some discrepancy about when or if money exchanged hands, but hopefully that's enough to keep us off prison.
If I'm wrong.
Anyway, look, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Great to have you in the studio. And obviously it's fascinating times at Reform. Presumably we're only seconds away from the next defection. So
it seems that way.
We'll bring that to people. Gawain Taylor there, who's a former Reform UK spokesman. But yes, Nigel Farage is apparently leading the betting at the moment in the polls. Coming up, I've got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, so stay tuned for that.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, the fog thickening up in places overnight and slow to clear across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular tomorrow. Elsewhere, much of England and Wales is dry and cloudy. High pressure is keeping things that way. Not many big changes with the weather, but the wind's still coming in from the northeast, still feeding in a few showers across southeast England overnight. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry, bit of drizzly rain heading into Shetland, but it's the fog thickening up across southwest Scotland and the west of Northern Ireland that could cause some problems. Freezing fog as temperatures fall well below freezing. We could see negative double digits through some sheltered glens across Scotland. That fog, particularly in and around Glasgow and across the west of Northern Ireland, may stick around for all of tomorrow. Certainly a dull, damp and drizzly start across Shetland, but actually some of the highest temperatures here to begin the day. We could be -9, -10 through some of the sheltered glens across Scotland. A cold start for Northern Ireland. That fog, particularly in the west, again, stubborn and slow to clear. And this cloud is pretty stubborn across England and Wales. Maybe some breaks in the cloud across northwest Wales, the far northwest of England. So chance of a bit of sunshine here and there, but mostly just staying cloudy, but largely dry. It's in the far south where we'll continue just to see a few showers and still a fairly brisk and chilly wind. Elsewhere, the wind's pretty light, generally a bit lighter than today. Temperatures still touch below average, 6 or 7 Celsius for most. Sunnier skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but temperatures here only 4 or 5 at best. And again, where that fog sticks, we're not going to get above freezing. Some of that fog thickening up again Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So again, that could be slow to clear on Thursday. Thicker cloud across these eastern and central parts of England on Thursday. Some drizzly rain is likely here, so quite dank. And again, not feeling very warm with temperatures, for the most part, single digits.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
All right, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Let's rattle through the first round of these front pages, shall we? Start with the Metro. Assassin suspect had jackal ghost gun. Now, this is the person who's believed to have shot that CEO of the medical insurance company in America. The deadly weapon made on a 3D printer. So some more detail coming out about that suspect. The Independent, they've gone with every household has 3 or 4 missing. It's our nightmare. And this is from Syria. And it's from Assad's slaughterhouse jail to the morgue being piled up with bodies. They are now uncovering even more brutalities of the Bashar al-Assad regime. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Rayner to force through plans for new jails. So apparently the Green Belt and councils will not be able to stand in the way of major new infrastructure. So under new laws to tackle the prison overcrowding crisis, the Ministry of Justice will be able to bypass councils that would normally decide on planning applications, even if they are on the Green Belt. And apparently some of this is going to go towards building new prisons. I imagine some people will be quite conflicted over this. We do need more prisons, I think, and people have been calling for it for a while. Whether or not they want it next door to their house, of course, is another question. So there we are. The Eye, new turmoil in Middle East as neighbours launch attacks inside Syria. This is in relation mainly to both, Turkey and Israel doing various different things, I think, to try to prevent this new regime from getting hold of chemical weapons and being able to use it against them. The Daily Express, it strengthens my resolve to continue Becky's legacy. The proud mother of murdered diplomat Rebecca Dykes vows to keep fighting to stop violence against women as she's honoured by the King. So there we are. Just to round us off with this particular segment here, we're going to go to The Guardian. They've got a side story here. care homes to be used for asylum seekers. Asylum seekers will be housed in disused care homes and student digs under a Home Office plan to find 800 new accommodation sites and cut a bill that has risen to £8 million a day. So let's just start with that one. You've got care home sites here, you've got student digs. I suppose they said they'd end the use of migrant hotels. I'm not sure people necessarily thought they'd be putting them in care homes instead.
This is why the immigration story has been the biggest issue for a long period of time. It does have to stop now. Where are you housing people? We're now turning to care homes, turning to student accommodation, turning to hotels. I mean, literally, you're talking about a moratorium on anybody else coming now into the country. This is unworkable and unacceptable.
Well, Esther, it's a damn sight cheaper than the hotels, which for 14 years were being used by the last government. And undoubtedly, the asylum numbers have got to come down, and they've got to come down dramatically. Already, we've seen a 30% increase in deportations under this government. That needs to go further. But it's not just asylum and illegal immigration, it's legal migration that was allowed to let rip under the last government.
Slight contrast, Alex, between cutting pensioners' winter fuel allowance and allowing care homes to be used to house asylum seekers.
Well, this is it, Patrick, and while I listen to you guys, I'm thinking it's about priorities, and people want the people that are paid into the system their whole lives to be the priority, and they're not. You know, while pensioners freeze, there are people who are going to get free heated accommodation and food, and that's what riles people up more than anything.
Fair enough, but look, obviously Labour say, as they do, that this is just an inevitable consequence of the situation they were presented with. But
and you can't stop it overnight. And anyone who suggests you can is misleading people.
OK. Now, this is a very unusual story, and I do want to warn people, actually. I think you probably are going to find this quite disturbing. Now, you know, it's one thing setting a weird world record, right? But whether it's the most eggs balanced on someone's head or the world's largest rubber duck collection, well, one Lily Phillips wants to add a world record to that list.
I want to be the first person to be with 1,000 guys in one day.
Logistically, how long are you going to spend with each man?
In out, I'm hoping a couple seconds at most.
Esther, what does this say about the state of our society, really, this?
I think it's her, actually. I think she, you know, I'd say she's psychologically, there's something going on there. I think what she's aiming to do is really quite revolting. And how would anybody, well, why would anybody want to be remembered for setting that world record? It is disgusting. This is nothing new. It's quite disgusting how it's done. If you think about that, it's a line of 1,000 men. I mean, it is revolting.
Yeah.
You know, though I would say spare a thought for the world record verifier who's got to prove this has happened. But actually, honestly, I think she needs to see, honestly, a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
I slightly disagree, you know, because I think that with things like OnlyFans and a lot of social media these days, it's this race to the most outrageous thing possible. And we're seeing, I mean, obviously, she's become a famous. She's been in headlines in newspapers multiple times. This isn't the first time that she's done something like this. There was another event as well.
Is it not?
Oh, it is. It's
I know people are free to do what they want, but in this instance, I think she needs help.
Well, do you know, I normally take the view that unless it scares the horses and it's involving consenting adults, then what you do in your private life is your own business. Brilliant. However, this is really weird. And actually, when you read between the lines, she's made £2 million out of this. So you know, this is deliberately done for the purpose. Wow. But also, there's a really sick read across to that awful case in France of the guy who drugged his wife and brought in 100 men to rape her, and it's really chilling.
There's a comment here about blokes, and I do want to make that point. By the way, I do not hold myself up to be some kind of moral bastion of goodness in this world, but yeah, I think you've got to have a word with yourself, lads. If you're queuing up, you know, to do that kind of thing, and you know, I think there are issues at play there. I don't think the men emerge well from this, let alone obviously
to say the very least.
But
unfortunately, they won't be held accountable for it, but she will.
But now that she's revealed this live on her mum and dad, or somebody going to say, "Hey, love"?
Well, she comes from a really wealthy family, a really well-to-do family.
Is somebody not going to say, "Are you sure? Let's talk this through"?
I know. This is the thing. She comes from such a good family by the looks of it as well, and she doesn't need the money.
I feel I need to call her up and say, "Don't do it."
Well, we're going to have to hit the break, and when we come back, it's going to reveal today's greatest Bristol Union jackass and a couple more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages as well, so stay tuned.
Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by Geordie Shore star Ricky Guanaccio. Have I said that right? Is that Italian?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Italian, your parents Italian?
Is it? Pronunciation was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, mate, Geordie Shore, I've never watched it, mate, so I do apologise about that. But I know these reality TV shows are making big stars out of the people, making you famous, making you loads of money. Is it worth it?
For me personally, yeah. It's been a hell of a career. Been a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Ups and downs, but first and foremost, money-wise, yeah.
That's good. So people stopping in the street, you being famous, wanting the autograph and all. How did you cope with that, Ricky?
Well, when we first started doing the show, I mean, we got our show off the back of Jersey Shore in America. We never expected the fame that we got, and, you know, being one of the biggest reality TV shows in the UK and now the world, you know, it's in 150-odd countries worldwide. Wow. It's pretty crazy. It's when you're living in houses. I mean, for example, Geordie Shore and Love Island's probably the same as well. When you're living in villas and you're living in houses, the arguing side sort of plays on your mind. You've got to deal with all that. You know, it's a hard place to be. It's a pressure cooker.
You're living in one of these villas, Ricky, or one of these houses. Do you ever wake up one morning and think, "What am I doing here?"
When I first started, yes. Yeah. Now, I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't mind, you know, it's dramatic or whatever it may be.
Have you ever worked behind a bar?
No.
No?
Yeah, for not a long period of time. My mum and dad had a...
Well, I can
definitely messed this one up.
Yeah, I can actually believe that you've never worked behind a bar.
Yeah, so my parents sacked us when I worked in the restaurant.
Well, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't get a job here with a pint like that, would you?
Do you want it?
No, mate, no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
All right, welcome back. A couple more front pages for you just to round us off. The Daily Mail, women left in agony by medical misogyny. This is an MP's report condemning gynaecology care, saying that GPs are often to blame, women being let down, apparently, when it comes to poor care there. The Sun, Kate sinks the Bismarck. Kate Moss has split from aristocrat boyfriend Count Nikolai von Bismarck after 9 years together, reportedly, making it very clear, and according to The Sun, that she's the one who did the dumping. So there we go. The Times, Israel blitzes arms silos and sinks navy in Syria. Netanyahu says attack was vital for security, but he rules out a full-on march on Damascus. So there we go. Just very quickly before we go to Greatest Britain Union Jackass, well, apparently Nigel Farage is leading the betting to become the next PM at 5-2. Kemi Badenoch is next at 3-1. Angela Rayner, 6-1. Wes Streeting, Boris Johnson and Yvette Cooper are just behind. Bill, what do you think of that?
There's so much baloney written about Nigel Farage and Reform at the moment. He's got a ceiling, and Reform have got a ceiling, of about 25% of the vote. They can't get above that figure, and that is not a position from which you can win a general election. And part of the reason he can't get above that figure is for every one person he pulls towards him, he alienates two others.
Oh, well, there you go. The views of Bill Rammell there. I don't know. I imagine there'll be quite a few people who are sticking a tenner on at the moment, although I could endorse that kind of behaviour, of course. Right, it's time now for Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Esther, who's your Greatest Britain, please?
OK, it's an honorary one. It's Arnie Slot. I always said I love Jurgen Klopp, but Slot is going to be better. Where are they? Riding high in Europe, won tonight 1-0. Riding high there in the Premier League. That is my man.
All right, you're going to be hard-pressed as I'm a United fan, but there we go. Go on.
Mine's Rich Holden MP. He's brought forward the conversation today about marrying of the first cousins, which I think is a really important topic. We've spoke about it tonight, but very important.
Important topic. Go on, Bill.
Ralph Fiennes, the actor, appeared. He's been nominated for a Golden Globe. Appeared in the magnificent film Conclave that I watched at the weekend. And apart from anything else, that demonstrates there's more politics in the papal conclave than there is at Westminster.
Oh gosh, there you go. Good stuff. Well, a strong set of choices. I am going to go for Richard Holden MP. I think for igniting that discussion that has been, taking place so far when it comes to first cousin marriage. Who's your Union Jackass, please, Esther?
Bridget Phillipson,
right.
who who's Secretary of State for Education. I know she's got an unhealthy hatred of private schools, and it isn't that what she's doing there. Actually, she's pushing this policy through in record time, and here is the bit which makes her a jackass, that most of those private schools now can't get their VAT registration number, which means they can't do the billing, can't get the money back. So unnecessary haste in her ideological, misguided policy.
All right, almost like they haven't quite thought it through. Alex, go on.
Mine is the cretinous Greta Thunberg. She's out in Germany at the moment. She's done a speech at a Palestine rally. We should F Israel, F Germany. And I just think, well, you're in that country, be at least a little bit respectful. But no, she can't stop. She's got a new thing now. She's not being paid enough by the climate people. She's on to Palestine.
All right, go on, Bill.
The Public and Commercial Services Union, which has advised civil servants they can sue their colleagues who don't invite them to a Christmas party. I mean, there's a serious issue around discrimination, but it was never intended for madness like this.
I tell you, I don't know who to go for tonight with this now. You could go for any single one of them. I wasn't aware of that PCS one, and we probably haven't gone for a right reply, so I'll leave that one there. I think I might go for Greta Thunberg. I think
We've got a double whammy tonight, guys.
I would have allowed Bill to have beaten me there, but not you, Alex.
All right, you can have it, Esther. There you go, there you go. Right, OK, now Headliners is on, and it's presented this evening by the wonderful Josh Howie. Josh, what's coming up?
You have been on fire this evening, Patrick. What a great show. We have Moxie, we have Coxie, we have who has hit Floyd Mayweather in London today. That's breaking news. And also, if you have an attractive cousin, why this is a pretty good time.
That's one way of putting it, Josh. Good stuff. Look, make sure that you keep it Headliners. It's always a fantastic way to end your evening. Headliners on GB News next for the next hour. Thank you very much, everybody. You know, it's been a bit of a tricky show tonight and a couple of things, but much appreciated. So thank you. And thank you, everybody who's been watching and listening. And thank you for all of you, the viewers and the listeners, who make GB News what we are. I'll see you tomorrow.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, the fog thickening up in places overnight and slow to clear across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular tomorrow. Elsewhere, much of England and Wales is dry and cloudy. High pressure is keeping things that way. Not many big changes with the weather, but the wind's still coming in from the northeast, still feeding in a few showers across southeast England overnight. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry, bit of drizzly rain heading into Shetland, but it's the fog thickening up across southwest Scotland and the west of Northern Ireland that could cause some problems. Freezing fog as temperatures fall well below freezing. We could see negative double digits through some sheltered glens across Scotland. That fog, particularly in and around Glasgow and across the west of Northern Ireland, may stick around for all of tomorrow. Certainly a dull, damp and drizzly start across Shetland, but actually some of the highest temperatures here to begin the day. We could be -9, -10 through some of the sheltered glens across Scotland. A cold start for Northern Ireland. That fog, particularly in the west, again, stubborn and slow to clear. And this cloud is pretty stubborn across England and Wales. Maybe some breaks in the cloud across northwest Wales, the far northwest of England. So chance of a bit of sunshine here and there, but mostly just staying cloudy. But largely dry. It's in the far south where we'll continue just to see a few showers and still a fairly brisk and chilly wind. Elsewhere, the wind's pretty light, generally a bit lighter than today. Temperatures still touch below average, 6 or 7 Celsius for most. Sunnier skies for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but temperatures here only 4 or 5 at best. And again, where that fog sticks, we're not going to get above freezing. Some of that fog thickening up again Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So again, that could be slow to clear on Thursday. Thicker cloud across these eastern and central parts of England on Thursday. Some drizzly rain is likely here, so quite dank. And again, not feeling very warm with temperatures, for the most part, single digits.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin's son spent $6.2 million, £4.9 million on a banana, duct taped to a wall, a piece of art by artist Mauricio Catalan. Other artwork has recently caused controversy. A portrait of the British computer scientist Alan Turing by the world's first ultra-realistic robot artist, that is to say ADAR, sold at auction for almost $1.1 million. Joining me now to talk about these latest hoo-has is art critic and mentor at the University of Arts London, Estelle Lovett. I have a feeling that in the case of the banana, it's quite a lot to do with the buyer. Now, you've researched the buyer a little bit. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Justin's son?
Yes, so he's a very wealthy cryptocurrency dealer. And of course, you know, everything now is AI and FTs, and it's the way that money's going, and it's very good publicity for him. So obviously, you know, he's not daft. But what makes this banana so unusual is, and it has, as you say, taken the art world by storm. It is the current spectacle, and what's amazing is that even during these very difficult times, the art market still manages to spend big on a significant fuss. Why has it created this fuss? Well, don't forget, the winning bid just happened in a matter of minutes. It took Justin's son minutes to beat 6 other rivals, so they've all got mega bucks in their pocket. But you know, it's conceptual art at its best.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out, why am I so happy that this is my cousin? Why has someone in London